Foundation and a longtime advisor to the Chinese government. Robert, it's always good to have you. What is going on? Apparently, the regulators are telling Didi they can't go ahead with this listing. How do we interpret it?
Didi is the poster child for President Xi Jinping's vision of what's called common prosperity, which has many elements, two of which, probably the most important, are what's called the disorderly expansion of capital, which is a broad term. It can be utilized very much across the spectrum, but has as its focus the platform companies, of which, of course, Didi is a primary one, because it relates to the relative power in the economy and society of these companies versus the party, the Communist Party of China, the CPC, which is the perpetual ruling party of China. And because of the expansion of so-called expansion of disorderly expansion of capital, these platform companies have had much more impact in society. So this is a reversal of that. The second point is how they treat their workers, the gig workers, because this has become a major factor in Chinese society. How to balance the imbalances between urban and rural ownership and workers, inland and coastal regions. Common prosperity was derived after China achieved what for almost 10 years was a prime objective of Xi Jinping, which was to eliminate all extreme poverty. So this common prosperity is a key to understand the situation with Didi, which was viewed as not being particularly subject to the leadership of the party.
So I just want to be clear. So are you still in regular contact and advising the Chinese government, or was that a thing of the past?
I'm regularly doing media and involved with a lot of people, not necessarily on the Didi issue, of course, but just last night I was involved in doing commentaries on the latest political meetings, the so-called two sessions of the National People's Congress and their consultative conference, which just ended yesterday.
Well, what did you learn there?
Well, a lot of things. First of all, that China is most focused on stability. They recognizes the challenges, the obvious international challenges that we've seen, and some of these tensions in society. It was mentioned in terms of how China has to deal with these gig workers. I think they mentioned 200 million people, workers were those who had not kind of written new kinds of jobs, and China has to figure out how to regulate them. This is a very big deal in China and is a good prism to see the light that is coming in for the next period of time, as long as Xi Jinping is in power, and that is an undeterminable period of time. This year, at the end of this year, is the 20th National Congress of the Communist Party of China, which Xi almost certainly will be given a third term and basically an unlimited term. So what his vision is what's critical. China is now has elevated what's called the two establishers, which is to establish Xi Jinping as the core of the party, and the party leads the country. And Xi Jinping thought, it's a longer phrase, but basically Xi Jinping thought is the guiding doctrine for the country. And common prosperity, of which, again, Didi is a poster child of what is not, is perhaps the prime domestic driver of common prosperity.
Robert, aside from Didi and aside from China's efforts to try and restrain some of its companies, of course, we do have these stocks going down because of U.S. law that is going to make it more difficult for many to continue to list here in the States, list their shares here. Is it right now the situation where China doesn't feel it has an interest in allowing these companies to find some way around this? In other words, having their auditors be subject to U.S. examination or whatever the standards might be that would allow these companies to retain their listings?
It's a mistake to look at all of these questions as a yes or no simplistic. There are many different views that compete with each other. An important factor that I should stress in common prosperity that China says, it is not to Robin Hood and take from the rich to give to the poor. It's not to create a welfare state where everyone is equal. That's not the intent at all. Because China recognizes, she in particular, that entrepreneurship, energy, the market allocating resources is absolutely essential for China to achieve its great rejuvenation by mid-century. So that's a critical factor. So each individual question needs to be evaluated by competing objectives. And China does want to open up. It does want its companies to be prominent in the world. China has a global initiative for development that it wants. It wants its companies to do it, but it still has other issues. It wants to be absolutely sacrosanct in controlling data. It doesn't want its data outside. And so, given a choice, if one has to make a choice between market success and security as China would see it, they will always opt for security. And security for the party to maintain its leadership is number one.